Okay guys, welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Leo. Behind the camera we have Garnett. And today we're gonna be making for you a really quick pan pizza that you can make in under 3 hours. Now that includes 2 hours of rise time. So really hands-on stuff here. We're only talking about 20 minutes. We're using bread flour today because all-purpose flour just doesn't have the protein and the gluten development that we're gonna need in this short amount of time to be able to produce a high quality dough. Okay, so we're gonna start by blooming the yeast, and we're doing that inside of warm water. And the reason why we do this is because it speeds up the activity of the yeast and gets the cultures growing at a faster rate. We're gonna add a teaspoon of honey to that because the yeast will actually feed on the sugar of the honey, and I just don't like to use sugar. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix that up nicely. Make sure you can do it with a whisk, but make sure you get it all nice and combined. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna let it sit for about 10 minutes. And what you'll find is the yeast will start to bubble up, and twofold. One, it gets the process started a little bit quicker, but also two, you're testing to make sure that the yeast is still active, that it's still alive. One other thing I'm gonna do as well, I'm gonna take a teaspoon of warm water and add it to the salt. I like to do that because it gets more hydration to the dough that we're gonna need at a later point, and you'll see why. This recipe is a 70% hydration, just roughly above, with a teaspoon of warm water inside of the salt. So it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to work with. It'll be a little bit sticky, but the results that it's gonna produce afterwards are gonna be well worth it. You're gonna see why. The higher hydration dough will bake up lighter, fluffier, and you'll get some of those really nice air pockets. For all the headaches that you have to deal with stickier dough, you'll produce a higher quality product. So we're just gonna wait for this to bloom another few minutes or so, and you'll start to see that it'll start to bubble and foam up, which is what we want. And then from there, we're gonna add it to the flour and we'll start kneading our dough. Okay, as you can see, after about 10 minutes, it's starting to bloom. So now we confirm that the yeast is active, it's alive, and we can start making the dough. So we're gonna add the entire solution. You're just gonna slowly start combining the yeast water and the flour. Just scraping the sides, working around, getting it all put together. We're doing it this way with a spatula first because it just saves the mess of getting in there with your hands and then everything getting really sticky and then creating a really big mess. And it'll be a little bit easier to work with. So as you can see here now, it's pretty much together. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna get in there with our hands. So in the same manner, just scraping the sides and pressing the center. Pull the bottom of the dough up and press in the center. The idea here is just you're gonna wanna knead this for about 3 to 5 minutes. Just wanna kind of roll it around, try to incorporate all that flour. And again, here, patience is key. It won't take long. You just gotta continuously knead it and fold it into itself. I like to kind of roll it around the bowl and just pick up all that flour. And that's why I like to make this sort of saltwater slurry, because then when I add it in, it'll be just the right amount of moisture to sort of soak up all that excess flour along the edges. So nothing too crazy. Again, a couple minutes. We're about at this point. Still needs to be worked. But what we're gonna do now is add, like I said, this saltwater solution. Again, operating in the same manner, pulling from underneath, and then I sort of press with my knuckles. And you'll notice that when you start, you can really feel the salt granules, and they're sharp inside the dough. You know that it's done in two ways. One, that salt will be completely dissolved and you'll stop feeling it in your fingers and in your hand while you're kneading it. And number two, you want this really doughy, sort of pillowy consistency. You're not gonna be doing this for very long. Between 3 and 5 minutes is all you really need. And keep trying to sort of wrap it along the edges of the bowl. Pick up as much of the flour as you can. And you can see already, see how nice of a consistency it's getting? And the process of kneading it really also too helps you build gluten strength inside the dough and get this really nice, springy, doughy, pillowy, high hydration, beautiful dough. If you're working at home with a stand mixer, feel free to throw this in to the mixer and do this part for you. I like to do the early stages by hand just because it allows me to sort of feel that I got the right consistency in the dough. And you'll know the more that you do this, that you can just tell by touch and feel the way that the dough should be and how it should come out and when it's done. I highly recommend get a kitchen scale, something that measures to the gram. Ideally, it has to measure to minimal at least half a gram, because sometimes you're gonna need that finite measurement. So make sure you're getting the right one. Now we're getting to the point where the dough is very pillowy. It's got some pushback to it, so when I'm pushing it in, it's sort of kicking back out. So I can really feel the strength in the dough building. So I know that it's getting close to being ready. So yeah, we've been mixing for, maybe about 5 minutes, and we're just about there. So now what I like to do is the slap and fold technique. I'm gonna get the dough, put it on a nice clean surface. Just gonna slap it down and fold it over. Slap it down and fold it over. And what this will do is get it to fold inside of itself and start building all those nice gluten strands that will form into air pockets and air bubbles, and it'll fold from the inside out. Uniform dough ball. Look at that, beautiful. So this is the pan that I'm going to be using for our pizza today. It's a anodized aluminum sheet, and what's good about it is the aluminum is such a great heat conductor, so it'll allow you to get that nice, very crispy bottom on the bottom of the pizza dough. At the same time, it has a very non-stick surface, so you'll notice not only will it cook beautifully underneath and provide you that really nice crispy crust and a beautiful color underside, but it'll also be able to slide out very easily when it's done baking. So what I'm gonna do is lightly oil it with some olive oil. I would say maybe about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then you're gonna want to just make sure to spread and lubricate the entire base of the pan, and including up the sides as well. So ultimately when the dough rises and then when it bakes, the oil will be able to, again, aid in that beautiful crispy bottom, but also allow it to slide right out. So now on to stretching of the dough. Again, like I said, because you've been spending all this time working it and kneading it, it'll be a little bit tough. So when you're spreading it out, it'll want to spring itself back in. It's very tense. Spread it out as much as you can. What you want to do is sort of push it to its limits without tearing it. But then once I get to the point where I find that it's not going to really stretch anymore, I'm going to let it rest. 10, 15 minutes tops, and what you'll notice is it'll really, really relax and become so much more workable. And then we'll be able to stretch it the entire way. So just sort of pressing down in the middle and stretching it as much as I can. Again, just sort of feeling and trying to understand the breaking point, but not crossing that threshold. So I'm not gonna fight it, and come back to it in about 10, 15 minutes, and you'll see, like nothing, it'll relax and it'll be able to just spread the rest of the way. So we're gonna leave it for 10 minutes and come back. Okay, so now it's about 10 minutes later, and you'll see that it can actually stretch significantly easier than it was before. We're just gonna sort of palm it gently. Doesn't have to go all the way to the corner. You do your best to get it as stretched out as possible, but through the rising process and the baking process, it will eventually expand into those areas. Then you have to coat the top with some olive oil. I just take my brush, I sop up some of that oil from the corners that sort of got pushed to that space from stretching out the dough. And if you have to add a little oil on top, it looks like I'm gonna have to do that. Just a little drizzle. And we're gonna just spread, just to make a nice thin coating on the top so that while it's rising, it doesn't dry out. That's all, just nice lightly coated. So what I'm gonna do from here is I'm going to cover it with a tea towel, and I'm gonna actually place it in the oven to rise for 2 hours. I'm also gonna turn on the oven light because that creates a perfect environment. In the oven light creates enough heat in there, so that's an optimal situation to allow the dough to rise. So we're gonna cover it with a tea towel, just like so, and then into the oven and rise for 2 hours. Okay, so while that's rising, we're gonna get into the pizza sauce. I like to keep it simple. I don't like to cook my pizza sauce. I like to put it onto the pizza raw. I find that the flavor is a little stronger, and I just like that fresh tasting, light tomato. You know, we're gonna have a little salt and pepper and oregano. And again, just keeping it really simple. The type of tomato is very important. So what I like to use is a canned Marzano tomato. I find it has the best pizza flavor, and it's gonna be something that stands out, and it's a little bit more robust. And there's another sort of hack to it as well. I don't like to use the tomato sauce that these tomatoes sit in, just the actual tomatoes itself. So what you're gonna wanna do is just remove the plump whole tomatoes and separate it from the standing tomato sauce. 2 reasons. 1, I don't find that the flavor is as nice or as strong using the standing tomato sauce. And 2, we just don't need that much. This is the perfect amount. So then I have, about a tablespoon of salt. I have a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper and a teaspoon of oregano that I'm just gonna add directly in. And then for a little bit of sweetness, which I like, also optional, some people add sugar to their tomato sauce. Again, I don't like sugar. I'm gonna just use a teaspoon of honey. And I'm not gonna blend this tomato sauce because I find that when you blend it, it comes out like almost orange, which I don't like. I like it to stay that robust red in color. It provides a really nice contrast when you're making the pizza. But also too, when you blend it, it's a little bit too smooth. And when I eat my pizza, I like to have the chunks of tomato in there and sort of bursts of flavor in your mouth. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually just crush it by hand. And again, nothing special here. You're just gonna sort of work it around and just break down all those whole tomatoes. Just make sure that all those large tomato chunks are broken down, and you have yourself a beautiful, nice, simple, delicious pizza sauce. Okay, so 2 hours later, let's see what we got. Beautiful. Look at that. Look how much it's puffed up. It's light, full of air. This is gonna bake beautifully. I'm gonna sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on top because it's delicious. And I'm gonna pre-bake it first for about 10 minutes. The reason is because the dough needs a certain amount of time to bake and cook completely, but it's too long for it to be with the sauce and the cheese and the toppings because that'll just burn. So we're gonna start 10 minutes, bake the bread, remove it, top it, put it back in. Okay, so we're gonna preheat the oven to 450, and we're gonna set up the oven to have the pan go onto the lowest rack because we want it to bake from underneath to really cook the underside of this pizza. I have a pizza steel in there, and usually, that's used for if you're making like New York style pizza or Napolitano style pizza, and you bake the pie directly onto the sheet. In this case, we're not doing that, but I'm gonna use it anyways because it gets nice and hot, and it helps really cook that underside to get that golden, crust. Beautiful. So you see here, it's only been in 2 minutes, and it's already starting to bake up. You see all the air pockets starting to form and build, and it's gonna create a nice, beautiful, fluffy, light crust. Okay, so now we're done. 10 minutes is up. We're gonna pull this baby out. We're gonna dress it. Look how lovely that looks. Wow. Baked up nice and fluffy. It's looking great. So first things first, we're gonna sauce it. Everyone has a different sort of take to how much sauce they want to put on it. I'm a sauce guy, so I'm going to put it all. You want to get it so that it goes right to the edge, but not overflowing. Because into the edge and into the cracks between the pizza dough and the pan, we're going to spread a very healthy amount of mozzarella cheese. And what that's gonna do is, while it's baking, it's gonna melt all into the edges and form this really beautiful cheese crust that's iconic with pan pizza. So I like to start with the edge, it being the most important part, to make sure that I have, and don't run out of, the mozzarella cheese to provide enough of the crust, because then we can always fill in the middle as it comes. The healthy amount of cheese is gonna be accompanied by a healthy amount of pepperoni. Make sure you go out there and you get yourself a nice high quality pepperoni. It really makes all the difference in the world. And you could do different things with this, obviously. Choose your toppings as you see fit. Outside of pepperoni, salami is really nice. Fried sausage, so you'll just remove the sausage from the casing, fry it up, and then you would just top it in this same manner. The pepperoni is gonna shrink down quite a bit, so it may look like we're putting on too much, but you'll see when it's done baking, it's gonna be just gorgeous. So now I'm gonna change the setting on my oven. Still 450 degrees, but I'm gonna set it to a convection bake. If you have that option, definitely use it. What that'll do is it'll help crisp up the top as it bakes, and you'll get a really nice, beautiful browned top. So almost done, only needs about another 15 minutes. You're gonna wanna watch it, keep a close eye on it, and you're gonna pull it out right when it has that sort of nice browned top to it. The cheese crust is nice and formed, it gets nice and dark, so it's very crispy. Again, 15 minutes and you're done. It's looking like it's starting to form the crust. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna prop it up under the broiler, toast the top, and get all the pepperoni nice and crispy, as well as the cheese, that nice brown, beautiful gold color. All right, look at that, done. Beautifully golden along the top, all the pepperoni nice and toasted, wonderful cheese crust formed. This thing is gonna be delicious. So we're gonna let it cool off 5-10 minutes. We're gonna pull it out of the pan, cut it up and serve it. Okay, so it's been resting for about 5-10 minutes. Just gonna, with a spatula, go along the edges and separate the pizza from the actual pan. Again, if you're using a nice high quality anodized aluminum pan, it will separate relatively easily. Beautiful. And we're just gonna plop it onto the board. Just work your spatula under there, scoop it up, and it should just slide right off. Wow, look at that. Look at this beautiful cheese crust. Nice, soft dough. This thing is gonna be impeccable. Okay, let's cut into it and see what we got. I use a chef knife. You can hear the crisp of the edges. Let's just open her up. Wow, look at that. Light, fluffy, crispy along the edges. Wonderful. Okay guys, you know I'm gonna have to get a taste of this. I'm gonna cut myself off the best part, which is, you know it, that corner piece. 2 sides of crispy cheese crust. Oh, steamy, hot deliciousness. Oh, wow. Wow. Seriously, Garnett, this is amazing. Oh my God. That's really good. Well, guys, if you enjoyed the video, if you liked the content, subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. Much appreciated. Allows us to get this stuff out to you. And on that note, we'll see you on the next one. Okay, let's eat this. 2 plates right there.
I'm on it.